Chapter 3 Journey to the Great Valley. While a hard choice, Rodney and Trudy knew Ruby was smart and capable of living on her own, letting her go for her own good. Ruby and her family didn't have time for a long, heartfelt goodbye. Her and Chomper fleeing for their lives as Red Claw attacked. What happened next was a whirlwind of events, running while her parents fled in the opposite direction. Pushing her own fear aside, Ruby joined Chomper and left for the Great Valley, her parents remaining in the mysterious beyond, along with her younger siblings. The Sharptooth trio were hot on their heels, Ruby and Chomper holding hands, huffing with fear and tiredness, hoping to evade the predators. Looming above all, Red Claw called after them. "Get back here, boy!" Screech and Thud were by his side, moving faster than him. "Your leaf-eater friend is dead, should we catch you." "You'll have to catch us first, you big bully!" Chomper roared back over his shoulder. "Good luck trying to catch her. She moves like the wind." "All the more tastier she'll be once we catch her." "Jerk!" The only thing Ruby heard was a series of roars, never learning the meat-eater language due to how difficult and involved it was compared to the leaf-eater tongue. Chomper and Ruby managed to find a set of rocks to take shelter in, breathing heavily while they waited for the predators to leave, holding tightly to each other and trembling in place. High-pitched noises were heard, and a set of thunderous footsteps moved by. Once they were safe, Ruby peered out, while Chomper took a whiff to make sure the coast was clear. The pair pressed on, following landmarks Littlefoot once told Chomper of when they were on the mysterious island together. Before them was a statue that looked like a long neck, formed by layers of rock, standing tall and proud. "We should be there soon," Chomper said, pausing to gaze to Ruby. "Littlefoot said to follow the bright circle. Now all we have to do is pass the mountains that burn. Then we'll reach the valley." "Very well. The sooner we get there, the better." Ruby gave a nod, studying the new terrain. While walking, she heard a set of voices. One sounded proper and polished, while the other was high-pitched and not so perfect. It came from a set of male egg stealers who strolled along. Holding her arm out to halt Chomper, she got an uneasy sense. "Hold still and keep quiet," she whispered, hoping they went unseen by the pair. "I'm hungry, Ozzy," the first complained, hunched slightly. "Those leaves back there look pretty tasty." A smack to the back of the head silenced him. "Hush, Strut. The sooner we find eggs, the better," the second said dismissively, gazing around with a sharp set of eyes. Knowing to keep clear of strangers, Ruby froze where she stood. Beside her, she saw Chomper's eyes going wide, his hand shaking as it touched her arm. "It's them." "Who?" she asked in a soft tone, trying to go unheard. "Ozzy and Strut. They tried to throw Littlefoot off the Great Valley wall. We should have no parts of these guys." Chomper trembled slightly, taking a single step back. "They're bad news." The egg stealers took a quick glance and walked right by them, only to pass and take a few steps back, thinking the one youngling seemed familiar. In that brief moment, Chomper dashed and ducked behind a rock, Ruby thinking of what to do. Frozen, she tried to act natural, unsuspicious, humming and gazing to the sky. Pretending to be in her own little world, she then looked to the pair, waving and saying hello. "Hello, strangers, strangers, hello." They came closer. The first and proper one gave her a curious expression. "Excuse me, girl, but were you here by yourself, or with someone?" Ozzy asked, pointing to the bare spot beside her. I'm alone. Alone I am," Ruby answered with a smile. "Oh no, she's alone and we can't leave her by herself. It's dangerous." Strut shook Ozzy's shoulder, looking from his brother to Ruby. "She should travel with us. We could find her family." That won't be necessary. My family's close by, and I'll be okay." Ruby went to walk away, throwing her arm back to the pair. "Thank you, though." Keeping her eyes forward, she dared glance to her side, not wanting to give Chomper's position away. She took some steps ahead, hoping they'd leave as well. The pair shared a confused expression, shrugging and turning to leave. All the while, Chomper didn't move, listening for them to go away, and Ruby to return. Peering out slowly, he saw the brothers had their backs to him, talking on and staying in one spot, much to his misfortune. When he thought they were engrossed in conversation, he took a few steps back. He went quietly and tried to go unnoticed, only for his foot to step on a twig. Of course, the sound caught the pair's attention, turning to him fast. With a small gasp, Chomper was petrified, unable to move an inch. "Well, well, well, if it isn't the egg that got away," Ozzy said, reaching out to grab Chomper. Snapping to keep them back, Chomper ran for it, only for the pair to jump and tackle him to the ground. In a matter of minutes, they clamped his mouth shut, pinning him down easily. Chomper didn't even get a chance to talk. Muffled sounds were heard as he panicked. "So what do we do with him, Ozzy?" "His parents tried to kill us. I think it's only fair we get rid of him," answered Ozzy, smiling mischievously down to Chomper, who shuddered. Ruby was not too far behind, gazing out and seeing they got Chomper. Slapping her hand to her forehead, she sighed. "Oh, darn it. Now I have to save him from those guys." Walking after them, she went undetected by the brothers, who continued on. By and by, the brothers stopped by a creek to get a drink, leaving Chomper unattended. His arms, legs, and muzzle were bound by vines, making it impossible for him to come to her. Thus, she slipped over to him. His eyes lit up when he saw her, moving slightly where he sat. Finger going to her beak, she wanted him to keep quiet, mouthing to him, "Keep still and be quiet till I free you." He gave a nod, seeing the pair lean over the water to drink, dipping their heads under the surface. From the water, Strut shook his head and simply gazed out across the small stream. "So, Ozzy, when are we going to get rid of the little biter?" Scratching his head, Strut noticed a scratch, receiving it from their tussle with a small Sharptooth. "The mountains that burn are close by. I say we toss him in the burning river. Seems fair enough." "That's a good idea." "Indeed, that's why I'm the leader." In the background, Ruby walked to untie Chomper, eyes flickering up to make sure they didn't see her. The knots were too tight, forcing her to bite them off, making it hard to watch them. Removing the vines from his feet, she went to yank the ones off his muzzle. When she looked to his face, she saw his eyes widen, gasping when she felt a hand upon her shoulder, squeezing it tightly. "It's you again," Ozzy said, whipping Ruby about to face her. "Why are you here and messing with that thing?"
Well, that is to say,"
Ruby stuttered, caught off guard and in shock. "You're in trouble now, dearie." Legs free, Chomper frowned and gave a swift kick, striking Ozzy in the legs. "Ouch!" Ozzy shouted, clutching his leg and jumping up and down, releasing his hold upon Ruby. Lifting her arm and making a fist, she caught him in the chin, lifting Chomper and fleeing, running for all she was worth. Scurrying to his brother's side, Strut waved his arms. "Ozzy, you okay?" Strut asked, reaching out to assist Ozzy. Ozzy slapped Strut's hand off, pointing in the direction Ruby went. "I'm fine. Go after her." "Oh, yes, go after her." Frantic, Strut pursued Ruby, who huffed and saw he gained ground, reaching out to nab her. "Got ya!" She ducked under a limb, seeing it strike Strut in the face, knocking him back, only for Ozzy to fly forward and leap to attack her. Ruby was thrown down, trying to protect Chomper, while Ozzy pulled him from her arms. "Leave us be!" Kicking, doing everything in her power, she gripped Chomper tightly. Sadly, she was no match for the adults, who easily overpowered her and held her down. "Ha! We got him, Ozzy! We got him!" Strut exclaimed, assisting Ozzy in trying to yank the pair apart. "Don't touch him!" Ruby shouted, keeping her arms wrapped around Chomper, who burrowed into her.
He's done nothing to you.
"He bit my tail," Strut said, showing bite marks along the tip of his tail. "He's not so innocent." Not only that, but his friends foiled our plans to eat, each and every time we were close to getting an egg. They interrupted it, and the brat's parents almost ate us. Ozzy managed to separate Chomper from her hold, glaring darkly to the small Sharptooth. Besides, one less Sharptooth isn't a loss.
"I won't let you do this."
Ruby tried to strike Ozzy, only for Strut to keep her back, gripping her arms tightly. "Then perhaps you might wish to join him," Strut said, laughing while he got a vine to bind her wrists in front of her, forcing her to follow. Excellent. Now, Ozzy was cut off when Chomper kicked him in the gut, struggling to get free. Hunched over, Ozzy huffed and glared at Chomper. "As for you, you need to learn some respect." Harshly, Ozzy slammed Chomper into the earth, knocking the wind from the boy's lungs.
"Don't!"
Ruby called, eyes welling with tears, fighting to get out of Strut's grasp.
"Please, don't hurt him."
Strut looked from her to Chomper, then back. Blinking a few times, he smiled. "Why, Ozzy, do you see this?" "What?" Ozzy snapped. "I think they like each other," Strut said, laughing aloud. "Ha! Imagine that! A Sharptooth and a fast runner. Together. Crazy, huh?" "That is rather unusual." Holding Chomper under his arm, Ozzy rubbed Chomper's head. "A strange one, this little guy. Come, before the bright circle sinks." There was little choice, Ruby having to go along, kept under surveillance by Strut, knowing she might try to chew the vines that wound over her hands and wrists. She thought hard on how to escape the egg stealer's clutches, having most of the day to think. Sadly, she came up with nothing, seeing Chomper peer at her and offer a small assuring smile. When it grew dark, they sought out shelter in a cave, Ozzy sitting to take the first watch. Ruby didn't face him, looking to Chomper, who curled up beside her, sleeping soundly. Whatever it took, she'd keep him safe, knowing she couldn't break her promise to Chomper's parents. Leaning back, she dozed off, knowing a good night's rest would help her think better. The night circle moved across the sky and sank, the bright circle slowly rising over the horizon. They were off again, Ruby glancing down to the thick vines that kept her hands clasped tightly together. Looking to find Chomper walking beside her, his mouth was clamped shut, noticing he seemed a bit sluggish. Worried he was sick, she heard his stomach, yanking the vine to get Strut's attention.
"Excuse me, Mr. Strut. My friend is hungry. Hungry my friend has become."
"Ozzy, the Sharptooth is hungry. What do we do?" Rolling his eyes, Ozzy looked to Ruby. This might be a trick. The girl is quite clever for someone so young. Meeting her eye level, he huffed. "The moment we undo his mouth, she'll order him to bite me." His words sank in, Ruby realizing they assumed she spoke Sharptooth. She looked at Chomper and threw him a wink, to which he gave a small nod. The brothers were unaware of the secret message sent between the pair.
"Of course I can tell him not to bite you, but you must allow him to eat and drink. At least have one last good meal before you get rid of him, right?"
"Very well. Tell him not to attack Strut," Ozzy said, folding his arms over his chest and stepping back. "Strut!" Strut shook, glancing from Chomper to Ozzy. "Why do I have to undo his muzzle? He's already took a bite out of me. He might have a taste for me." "Come now, Strut. The girl will talk to him." Strut looked to Ruby, who cleared her throat and tried to make some growling noises, attempting to match the Sharptooth language. Chomper had to keep from laughing, for the sounds Ruby made translated to some broken sentence. "Walk. Close. Down. Love. I. You. When she thought the pair was satisfied, she stopped and switched back to Leaf Eater.
Right, he won't harm you.
Okay, Strut. Make haste. We haven't got all day. Strut slowly went and untied Chomper's muzzle, leaping back and throwing his arms over his face to shield himself from an attack, which never happened. Chomper sniffed and went to eat some bugs, finding a nice puddle to lap water from. Becoming impatient, Ozzy grabbed Chomper and wrapped the vine back across his muzzle. That's enough. We must keep moving. Ozzy going on, Ruby was pulled to move, looking to Chomper and feeling bad for not being able to free them yet. She was on edge, jittery, and trying to think of how to get away, going over the choices they had. They could attempt a sneak attack, but being bound made it hard to put up a good fight. Again, she struggled to settle on a good idea, sighing heavily with loss. The green land changed, becoming dry and barren. Smoke flowing from the mountain's peaks. Chomper nudged her, having a worried look.
The Smoking Mountains,
she uttered, to which he nodded.
Then we don't have much time. Time is running out.
It wasn't like any place she'd ever seen, noticing bubbling black goo that smelled awful. Large towering mountains had smoke flowing from them, fire sparked out of the peaks. They came upon a bubbling pool of lava, Ozzy smiling, looking down to it, kicking a pebble in. The small rock splattered and melted into nothing, smoke rising from the area of rippling red and orange. With a grin, Ozzy turned to Chomper. Care for a bath? Tugging the vine connected to the one on his muzzle, Chomper was dragged forward, gripped and held over the large steaming pond.
Wait! Certainly you would allow him some final last words before you end him, right?
Ruby asked, being held back by Strut. Why? We won't be able to understand what he says anyway.
Still, it'd be the kind thing to do.
I suppose it'd be the good-hearted thing. Ozzy held Chomper close and untied the vines over his mouth, keeping him arm's length away. Right. Say what you have to say and make it quick. Chomper looked to Ruby, who gave him a single nod. Okay. Well, before you toss me in, I'd like to say a few words. You can talk, Ozzy exclaimed, unable to believe he understood the small Sharptooth. Yes, and I wish to speak. There was a pause, to which Ozzy shook Chomper to get him to go on. Right. I'd like to apologize for my parents trying to kill you, and, well... While Chomper spoke about nothing yet something, Ruby saw Strut let his guard down, seeing his grip loosen upon the one end. He was amazed that the Sharptooth was talking, mouth gaping open. Opportunity presented itself. Thus, Ruby took it and knocked him in the head, spinning to sweep his legs out from under him. Strut hit the ground and was dazed, struggling to get his senses together. Ruby turned to Ozzy, eyes focused on one objective: to save Chomper. Not so fast, my dear. Ozzy held Chomper even higher, leaning outward. Come a step closer and I'll drop him in. Ruby paused, eyeing Ozzy up.
Please, I beg you, don't hurt him.
With Ozzy's eyes on Ruby, Chomper swung his body out and walloped Ozzy across the face with his tail, sending them both backwards to the earth. Ruby dashed forward and helped Chomper up, fleeing before the pair could get up. She bit off the restraints to herself and his muzzle, Chomper biting the rest off easily. The vines collected in a pile under them, the pair running for their lives. Behind them, they heard the voices of the brothers, yelling and following them. Ruby saw a thick vine dangle from a limb not too far off, having an idea.
Chomper, do you trust me?
With all my being, he replied without hesitation or doubt.
Good, then hold tight to me.
Ruby reached her arm outward, feeling Chomper clutch her side. Ozzy and Strut reached out to her, their hands inches from the pair, who leapt off the edge. It was a ledge that dropped off over a forest, causing the pair to halt and freeze, to keep from falling over. "Blasted kids!" shouted Ozzy, shaking his fist in the air. "I hope you get eaten!" Gazing back, they saw the pair become smaller and smaller, only specks that faded from their lives. Through the air the pair went, Ruby grabbing another vine and swinging them over the land that lay below. The air flew through her comb and feathers, making her skin tingle. It was breathtaking, soaring and getting a view of what the flyers saw. Chomper grinned from ear to ear, peering down with awe. "We're flying, Ruby!"
"Yes, we are!"
Ruby found herself feeling free, seeing they were close to the landing. They found themselves hitting a small river that cut along the woods, Ruby making sure Chomper didn't drown. Holding him, she kicked upward and saw the light dance across the surface. Bursting up, they took a breath, Ruby swimming to the bank. While they crawled out onto the shore, they shook from the adrenaline rush. Dripping wet, Ruby shook to rid herself of the water. Chomper picked a leech off his arm, tossing it into his mouth, chewing and swallowing. "Well, with luck the rest of the journey won't be this exciting."
"I don't know why, but I get the feeling this won't be our last brush with danger,"
Ruby said, wiping the water from her face. "So long as we stick together, I think we'll be okay," Chomper said, reaching to hold her hand.
"Yes, if we stick together,"
she answered, taking his small hand in her own. Hands clasped tightly, they traveled on, hoping to keep away from any more hurdles that kept them from reaching the Great Valley. Within a few days, they reached the wall and climbed into the Promised Land. The adults allowed the pair to remain, thus a new life lay ahead for them, one without danger. Or so she thought. For the Gang of Seven often found themselves in the midst of danger, whether it was searching the secret caverns, finding missing Fastwater, meeting friends from the past. Every day was an adventure, keeping Ruby on her toes. Yet somehow she wouldn't want it any other way, for the gang became her second family, knowing they'd always be there for her and she for them.